Hello one and all, welcome back to Fires of Kaladesh MTG, and due to the beautiful Secret Lair Kaldheim Part 1 and Part 2 being released recently, I'm going to do a deck tech on my Boros / Lorehold Giant Tribal. My chosen commander is Kalemne, the Disciple of Iroas. She's 2, a red and a white for a legendary creature giant soldier. She has double strike, vigilance, and whenever you cast a creature spell with converted mana cost 5 or greater, you get an experience counter. And Kalemne, Disciple of Iroas, gets +1/+1 for each experience counter you have. So, let's delve in. So, we're running quite a bit of land in this deck, being Boros, Lorehold, red and white. Obviously, we're not going to have much draw or anything like that. The ones which I particularly wanted to highlight, of course, the always lovely Rogue's Passage. It taps for a colourless, so you can pay 4 colourless and tap to target creature can't be blocked this turn. Always useful in an aggressive deck, especially one where your commander is going to be getting bigger and bigger. Then we have the Slayer's Stronghold, which again taps for a colourless, or you can pay a red and a white and tap, and target creature is going to get +2/+0 and vigilance and haste until end of turn. Path of Ancestry is an essential land in any tribal deck, to be honest with you. It's going to enter the battlefield tapped. You can tap 1 mana of any colour in your commander's colour identity, and when that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, you get to scry 1. Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion, again taps for a colourless. With this one, you can pay 2, a red and a white, to give target creature double strike until end of turn. And kind of essential in any giant deck. It's the Ancient Amphitheatre. As it enters the battlefield, you can reveal a giant card from your hand. If you don't, it's going to enter tapped. And provides you with a red or white mana. So obviously, this is going to be quite an aggressive deck. It's going to be a little bit slow to start off with, unfortunately, but hopefully in those first few turns, everyone else is going to be ramping away and concentrating on getting their board to where they need it to be. As long as you can get Kalemne out turn 4, that's really a good starting point for you. So, other giants of interest we have in the deck include the 100-handed one. While he's only 4 to cast, so obviously he's not going to be activating Kalemne's experience ability. He's a 3/5 monstrous, or vigilant, sorry, who you can make monstrous. And if he is monstrous, he has reach and can block an additional 99 creatures. So obviously incredibly useful if you are having to defend yourself. The opponent, for example, is playing a token deck and they're swarming you quite a lot. It's going to be a really easy chump block with this one for most of their board. Quakebringer is an essential in any again. Your opponents can't gain life, and at the beginning of your upkeep is going to deal 2 damage to each opponent. This ability will only trigger if Quakebringer is on the battlefield, or if he's in your graveyard and you control a giant. Of course, essential for any Boros deck, we all know the little combos, is the Sun Titan. It's 4 and 2 white for a 6/6 vigilance, and whenever you get ETB or attacks, you can return a target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Bone Crusher Giant is one of our little cheap ones we can get out earlier on during the game, hopefully. With a lovely adventure side as well to deal 2 damage to any target. It's a nice 4/3 for only 3 mana. Two-headed Giant's a little bit unpredictable, but it's just nice again for the 4-drop for those earlier drops which you can get out. Thundercloud Shaman is going to take advantage of the number of giants that you have on the battlefield, because as he enters, he's going to deal damage equal to the number of giants you control to each non-giant, which at certain points of the game is potentially a nice little quick wipe for you, before you swing out with your massive, massive creatures. Quite a basic one, the Stone Shock Giant. 5 to cast, so he's going to activate the experience. He's got monstrosity again, and when he becomes monstrous, creatures without flying your opponent's control can't block this turn. It's just a nice little side ability there. And speaking of the lovely Kaldheim Secret Lairs, here is the beautiful Inferno Titan. It's a 6/6 for 6, with pumping, +1/+0 until end of turn, and whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, it's going to deal 3 damage divided as you choose, amongst 1, 2, or 3 targets. Palisade Giant, it's just a little one which could protect you a little bit, so all damage that would be dealt to you or another permanent you control is instead dealt to the Palisade Giant. Obviously he's not the best card in the world, but he's going to provide just that bounce. So if somebody is targeting one of your more powerful ones, you just pop it onto him instead. Shatter Skull Charger is a lovely one for only 3 mana. He's a 4/3, trample and haste. Kicker 2, if he enters the battlefield and kicked, he gets 2 +1/+1 counters. If he doesn't have a +1/+1 counter in your instep, he's going to return to your hands. Tectonic Giant. It's just some nice little abilities here. So whenever he attacks or becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, you can either deal 3 damage to each opponent, or exile the top 2 cards from the library, and choose one. You can play it until the end of your next turn. So obviously giving us a nice bit of kind of draw, or card advantage, and just nice to be able to hit 3 to every single opponent every time he attacks, or becomes the target of a spell, obviously. Kalemne's Captain, I think, is a lovely one in here for the monstrous ability again. So when it becomes monstrous, you can exile all artifacts and enchantments. Obviously, we are going to be running quite a few artifacts in here. It is a Boros deck at the end of the day. However, like anything like my play group, yours will also be leaning quite heavily onto artifacts and enchantments at the moment. I don't know what the problem is, or the fascination, but just a simple one with the Bulwark Giant, just to gain 5 life as ETBs. Not the best in the world. Realm Cloak Giant, however, he's got the beautiful sorcery of destroy all non-giant creatures, so essentially a board wipe for everyone but you. And then he's a 7/7 with Vigilance. Hammer Drop is a nice early one with that Mentor ability, so you can continue putting the +1/+1 counters on. If you're lucky enough to be able to attack with your Hammer Dropper and Calamity, you're just going to be boosting up your commander more and more and more. Make them a bit more insane every time. Magma Giant is quite a basic one again. It's just going to deal 2 damage to each creature and each player as he enters. The Bold Wear Intimidator is potentially quite a nice one if you have the mana. So cowards can't be blocked by warriors. You can make a target creature a coward until end of turn for 1. And target creature becomes a warrior until end of turn for 2 in a red. So obviously, if you are late in the game, you've got a lot of mana, you could potentially win out with this one by making a lot of your stuff unblockable. Skyrake is just a nice simple giant with reach. I'm not going to question why most giants don't have reach as they're giants, but never mind. Sentinel of the Eternal Watch is a bit of a hidden gem in here. This is a 4/6 with Vigilance, and at the beginning of combat on each opponent's turn, you can tap target creature that player controls. It's only 1, but that does make a hell of a difference when you can tap down the most powerful thing on the board, and they can't do anything with it for the rest of the turn. Hamletback Goliath is an absolutely disgustingly filthy card. So he's a 6/6, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield, whether it be one of yours or an opponent's, you put X +1/+1 counters on Hamletback Goliath, where X is that creature's power. So he's going to get ridiculously big, stupidly fast. The only downside is he is going to be quite the target of all your opponent's spells and abilities to try and get him off the board as quickly as possible. And then, of course, we have the Calamity Bearer. For giant source you control will deal damage to a permanent or player, it's going to deal double that damage instead. Bearer of the Heavens is a rather filthy card. A lot of people don't play this one. A, due to the ridiculously high mana cost. B, due to this ability. So when he dies, destroy all permanents at the beginning of the next end step. That's obviously including land. While this might not seem like such a good idea, he has some rather disgusting combos to really prove to your mates that Boros can keep up with the rest of the cards. We'll highlight those in a bit. Stone Hewer Giant should be essential for any Boros, as he lets you search your library for an equipment and put it onto the battlefield and attach it for only 1 and a white and tapping him. Sunrise Sovereign is going to give all your other creatures +2/+2 and trample, which obviously, as we all know, trample is going to be an essential ability in this deck. Yes, you've got the massive creatures, but there's nothing worse than being chump blocked. Borderland Behemoth is another one like the Hamletback Goliath. He's quickly going to become a target on the board. So he's got 4/4 trample, and he's going to get +4/+4 for each other giant you control. So really quickly, he's going to get ridiculously huge. I'm sure we all recognise Osgir the Reconstructor from the latest Lorehold set. He's a 4/4 giant artificer with Vigilance. You can sacrifice an artifact to give a creature you control +2/+0 until end of turn. You can pay X and tap to exile an artifact with converted mana costs of X from your graveyard, and you create 2 tokens that are copies of the exiled card. Giant Harbinger is just a nice giant shaman which will let you search the library for a giant card, reveal it, and put it on top of your library. Surtland Flinger combos well with quite a lot of the cards in here, to be honest with you. He's a 4/6 for 5, and whenever he attacks you can sacrifice another creature. When you do, he's going to throw that creature and deal damage equal to the sacrifice creature power to any target. If, however, the sack creature was a giant, which, let's be honest, in this deck, I'll be shocked if it's not, it's going to deal twice that much. So obviously nice combos with this one will include your Borderland Behemoth. When he gets ridiculously big, you just throw him at an opponent's face, take them out completely. Or obviously, with the Bearer of Heavens, hit somebody for 20 damage and then destroy all permanents. Doomscar Titan isn't too great, it's not too bad though. For 6 mana you're getting a 4/4, but as he enters the battlefield, your creatures are going to get +1/+0 and haste until end of turn, which has helped me out quite a few times, to be honest with you. Hillcomber Giant is another basic little common. It's just a 3/3 mountain walk for 4. Swathcutter is a 6 for a vigilant 5/5, and whenever it attacks, it's going to do 1 damage to each creature defending player controls. Obviously, especially useful against token players, or all of your friends who are probably making these horrible Inkling decks at the moment. And then last of all, we've got a Rumbling Sentry, which is going to let us scry as it enters the battlefield. But obviously, as you notice, it's that 5 CMC again, which means we're going to be putting counters on Kalemne, getting her bigger and bigger. Gotta say, Kalemne's experience ability is one of my absolute favourites. So let's move on to the artifacts. It's essential for any Boros deck. And we're going to start things off with the Dowson Dagger. So as it enters, target opponent's going to create 2 0/2 green plant creatures with Defender. The equipped creature gets +2/+1. Whenever it does combat damage, you can transform it into the lovely Lost Veil, which attacks for 3 mana of any one colour. Really is an essential card in most red decks, to be honest with you, as it gives that much needed quick ramp. Next up is, of course, Sunforger. If you have a Boros deck and you don't have a Sunforger, I highly recommend this. It's a lovely artifact equipment where the crit creature gets +4/+0. But the thing which really sets this apart is the red and white unattached Sunforger. You can search live for a red or white instant card with convert mana cost 4 or less, and then cast it without paying its mana cost. And then, of course, shuffle your library afterwards. Now, we'll be going for all the instants shortly and give you an idea of what sort of abilities which we can bring out with this. Maul of the Skyclaves is a rather filthy. For 2 and a white, as it enters the battlefield, you can attach it straight away. And the quick creature is going to get +2/+2, flying in first strike. Archaeomancer's Map is a bit of a staple from Lorehold. So as it enters the battlefield, you can search live for up to 2 basic planes, reveal them, put them in your hand and shuffle. And then whenever a land enters the battlefield under opponent's control, if that player controls more lands than you, which odds are they're probably going to, we are playing red and white, you can put a basic land from, you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. Crystalline Giant, he's not an equipment, but he is still lovely. For 3 mana, you get a 3/3. At the beginning of combat your turn, you're going to choose a counter of a kind at random that it doesn't have on it from Flying, First Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, Vigilance, and a +1/+1 counter. If you're lucky enough to be able to get this guy out turn 3, he's really quickly going to become a massive problem for your opponents as each combat phase goes along. Lightning Greaves, bit of a staple. Haste and Shroud for 0 equip. Oracle's Vault is a severely underrated card, severely underplayed card. So for 4 mana, you can pay 2 and tap to exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn you may play that card. You put a brick counter on Oracle's Vault. So again, that slight card advantage. But then once you've got 3 or more brick counters, you can tap to exile the top card of your library, and then you can play that card without paying its mana costs until end of turn. So obviously an essential in this deck, not only because of the fact we're playing red and white, so we aren't going to be getting a lot of lands onto the field quickly, But with the high cost of giants, being able to just tap, reveal it, and pop it straight onto the battlefield for free is absolutely lovely. And of course, even better if it's going to trigger off Kalemne again and give her more +1/+1 counters. Shocker! It's a Soul Ring. Do I need to say more? Commander Sphere as well, of course. Just nice to have that second ability to draw the card if you need to later on in the game. That's with the Hedron Archive. Taps for 2. You can pay 2 and tap to draw 2 cards. Swiftfoot Boots. Paired nicely, of course, with the Lightning Greaves. Herald's Horn. An essential for any tribal deck, where as it enters you can choose a creature type. And then creatures you cast of the chosen type are going to be 1 less to cast. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature of the chosen type, you can reveal it and put it in your hand, which again is giving us that nice little bit of card advantage. Godsend. Again, another severely underplayed card. So for 2 white and 1, your equipped creature is going to get +3/+3. But whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by 1 or more creatures, you can exile one of those creatures. Not only that, your opponents can't cast cards with the same name as cards exiled with Godsend. Really should be in more people's decks. So lovely. Just a nice deterrent if your creature's untapped. They're really not going to want to send anything too big at you. Especially in the case, obviously, if you equip this to Kalemne, because she's got that double strike with the first strike damage. She's not even going to get hit back and your opponent's going to be exiled. And then last of all, it's the ridiculously priced Argentum Armor, which gives +6/+6, and whenever equipped creature attacks, destroy target permanent. It's got a very unhealthy equip cost of 6. But obviously this is one of the ones which you could be searching for when you bring that Stonehewer Giant into play. For only 2 mana you can bring this out and equip it straight away for a really, really lovely effect. So as we said, with the Sunforger, we've got quite a lot of instants in here. Let's say compared to a lot of the people who I play with in my play group, I do run a lot more instants and sorceries in my Boros deck than most of them do, just because I like the variety and I like being able to surprise my opponents. We can start things off with a nice simple Mana Tithe. So for 1 you can counter target spell unless its controller pays 1. Crib Swap, a bit underrated. 2 and a white, you can exile target creature. Its controller gets a 1/1 colour shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. Ooh. Prefer to give them a 1/1 though than I would like Swords to Plowshares, where they're going to gain the life or let them search for a land. But it's just like that nice option again to be able to exile really cheap and bring it out with the Sunforger. Again, Pillar of Light is another exile. Yes, it's got conditions. The creature has to have toughness 4 or greater, but it's so cheap. You can pick these up for very, very little. And again, just a really nice instant to be able to exile a creature off the board. Unbreakable Formation is going to give all your creatures indestructible till end of turn. And then it has Addendum. If you cast a spell during your main phase, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures, and they also gain Vigilance until end of turn. So obviously you've got the combination of being a nice defending card and a nice attacking card on this one. Silence. Your opponents can't cast spells this turn. Nice one. As soon as they hit that untap step, you know what's going to be coming that turn, whether it be their commander or something rather disgusting and big. Yeah, just put my turn behind again. Speak of the Devil, it's Swords to Plowshares. So for 1 white you get exile target creature. The new downside is its controller is going to gain life equal to its power. And of course the Path to Exile. Another exile, but this time the controller gets to search the life for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Pact of the Titan is a rather interesting one. It's a 0 to cast. It is red. You create a 4/4 red giant creature token. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you can pay 4 on a red. If you don't, you lose the game, which is a bit extreme. But when you need a blocker to save yourself, if you think you can win out next turn, being able to pop 1 down for 0 mana just to last that extra turn, just really, really nice. And then, of course, what would a Boros deck be without a Boros Charm? So for red and white, you can choose 1 to deal 4 damage to target creature or player. Target player or planeswalker even. Permanents you control will gain Indo until end of turn, and target creature will gain double strike until end of turn. Obviously, mainly going to be running it for the indestructible side in this one. Mandate of Peace can only be cast during combat. Your opponent cast spells this turn, and it's just going to end the combat phase. So it's like its own form of a fog. So yeah, no one's going to be doing any damage, but if you haven't got the option to survive an attack, it's just nice to be able to completely stop it. And then of course, the rather pricey Teferi's Protection is absolutely lovely. For 2 and a white, it's an instant. So until your next turn, your life total cannot change, and you have protection from everything. All permanents you control will phase out. While they're phased out, they're treated as though they don't exist. They phase in before you untap during your untap step, and then you exile Teferi's Protection. Now obviously the lovely ability here is if you happen to have this one and your Bearer of the Heavens, so you let the Bearer of the Heavens die, you phase yourself out, everyone else's land, creatures, enchantments, artifacts all get removed, and you return to the game with a full board. Filthy. And last of all is Squash. It's going to cost you 3 less to cast if you control a giant, and deals 6 damage to target creature or planeswalker, which for 2 mana, really can't grumble with that one. Next up, we're going to be hitting the sorceries. We don't run a lot in this one, just the 3. Fire Giant's Fury was a rather lovely one. So target giant you control is going to get +2/+2 and trample until end of turn, and when it deals combat damage to a player this turn, exile that many cards from the top of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. So trample, extra stats, and card advantage. Really, really nice for only 2 mana. Open the Armory. There's an Essential Boros, 1 and a white. You can search library for an aura equipment, reveal it, and put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. And then last of all, Gift of Estates. If an opponent controls more lands than you, search your library for up to 3 planes, reveal them, and put them in your hand and shuffle. And then last off, we have a small handful of enchantments. Start things off with the Curse of Opulence. For 1 red, you can enchant a player, and whenever an enchanted player is attacked, you create a colourless gold token, and each opponent that attacks that player does the same. Obviously, it's a nice incentive to be able to get people to go in a different direction than yourself at the start of the game if you're lucky enough to draw this quite early. And also obviously helps you ramp out a little bit quicker to get all your giants out on the board. Brave the Sands is so underrated. It's 1 and a white. Creatures you control have vigilance, and each creature you control can block an additional creature. Legion's Initiative is going to give all your red creatures +1/+0, and all your white creatures +0/+1. And you can exile it for red and white. Exile all creatures you control. At the beginning of the next combat, return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control, and those creatures gain haste until end of turn. See, nice to be able to keep that on the board, not just for the stat boosting, but just in case your opponent does decide to try and do a board wipe, or really, really mess you up, just exile everything, bring it all back for the next combat. Ghostly Prison is another deterrent in here. So for 2 and a white, creatures can't attack you unless they pay 2 for each creature that's attacking you. Simple, but ever so lovely. And then last of all is a really rather old card, which I bought in bulk recently for every single one of my red decks. Uphill Battle is 2 and a red. Creatures your opponents play come into play tapped. And obviously the important point is the ones your opponents play. So not even just cast. So if there's cascading or if they're cheating out with the planar bridge, they're still going to be in the battlefield tapped. I was ever so chuffed when I found this one online, as it's not a very red ability, but one which always will be useful. And so there you have it. That is a bit of a rundown on my Boros / Lorehold / Giant Tribal, led by Kalemne, the disciple of Iroas. I hope this inspired you to make something a little bit more janky yourselves, as this is what this actually originally did start as, was just a jank deck, and then quickly realised how just overpowered giants really can be. Please leave a like, comment and subscribe if you want to, and we hope to see you next time. Thanks a lot.